Consider ShofarNexus. There are many things you should consider in our world of technology. Technology is a wonderful tool for your good and for your harm. These are some things to consider how technology is being used to monitor you and then control you. Some concepts are presented to give a basic overview. Some concepts are shown how ShofarNexus can be used for your protection. Using ShofarNexus or not, these are things you should consider. Consider an untraceable cell phone. Cell phones are the most significant tracking device, and they can be a serious health hazard. The reason given that your phone remains in constant contact with nearby cell towers is so that the system knows which tower to use to send your phone the command to ring. This was reasonable in the 1990s, but unnecessary today. Having the phone on your body for most of the day, transmitting radio frequency energy to the cell tower and into your body, is a serious health concern. There is no need for the phone to constantly send your ID, your location, and keep you in what is like a low-power microwave oven. Consider the technique used in World War II when a regular periodic set of odd messages were sent over the radio, most notably, "John has a long mustache," that was made famous in the movie The Longest Day. Most of the messages are just random, but a specific message will be heard by someone who will take a predefined action. Cell phone towers can do the same, sending a periodic set of random numbers, but when a given phone needs to ring, an identifier only it knows will be sent, and only then will it transmit. Going one step further, it is then possible to use numbers that even the phone system doesn't know which phone is which number, and they can change each call. When Alice calls Bob the first time, it is not Bob's phone number, but 1234. The next call to Bob might be 5678. There is no relationship between the calls. Bob is not tracked. This can be done even when the cell phone providers won't. Should we do it? Another important note. My name is John, and I have a long mustache. Consider phone services. While we may desire not to reveal our IP, location, or even the fact that we're making a call, we still will need to be able to talk or send SMS texts to those that are using monitored services. While the conversation, the time, location, and other details about Bob will be recorded by various agencies, Alice's location and IP will not. Bob is public. Alice is semi-private. Consider social media. When you share things on social media, you are sharing with the world and the agencies that want to track you. Alternatively, you could use a platform where the data you upload is placed in your server and private only to you. You then have the option of sharing some of your data with the world and some with particular parties. It is not the social media provider, but your server that is delivering content. You, and you alone, have the record of who viewed what and when. Your server is not a data collection device for other agencies, but a platform for you to share as you see fit. Consider self-issued credit. Cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, are decentralized, but not distributed. There remains a logical central authority, but no single holder of that authority. A fully distributed currency would have multiple issuing parties with exchange agreements between each other. This opens a door to time-limited self-issued credit or currency. This allows for local currencies to be used for local-only transactions, with the possibility of exchanging one local currency for another to broaden the usability, including worldwide. A given transaction is with the issuing authority and therefore sub-second. Credit is issued as fixed unit amounts or coins that are not divisible. Once a given unit returns to the issuer, its ID is extinguished, and so is any traceability. Semi-trusted offline exchanges become possible. Client software wallets can manage and broaden the exposure to loss by holding value with multiple issuers. Transactions occur with unique keys exchanged between the parties. Digital signatures allow for verifiable data to be kept by all parties. Using the Matreoshka protocol, transactions are private, untraceable, and no evidence is exposed that one ever takes place. Issuing and managing of transactions is cheap and does not require a mining process. Money is made by the producer of the product or service, not the money changers. Consider email. Email has been a simple and reliable tool for decades. However, there have been many simple methods to use email as a tracking device. Often, links to images will be embedded into the body of a message. Your email client will then fetch those images when it is opened. This process informs the image provider when and where you viewed the email. The email is tracking you. When an email arrives at a ShofarNexus email server, these links are found and the images are downloaded and embedded directly into the email. The tracking remains, but the information provided is that of the email server and at the time sent. When and from where you read it, irrespective of the email client, you are no longer exposed. You are no longer tracked. By default, any script is quarantined in the email. It is not lost, but it will not run. The email becomes a simple static file and not a program that runs on your machine for potentially invasive purposes. Consider media services. Media services consist of photo, audio, and video. They can be unidirectional in that the media is served from a server to a client or just recorded to a server. They can be bidirectional, where two or more end users simultaneously share audio or video, which is essentially a phone call. ShofarNexus provides standard media services such as video streaming. However, with Matreoshka, no third party can know the viewing or downloading is ever taking place. Consider a comment service. Comment sections are popular on many sites. Many comments are helpful when they offer encouragement, correction, questions, or links to other sources. Others are seemingly feel-good for the author, spam, or waste of time. The page owner may find an offensive comment and remove it, and perhaps ban the commentator, which is the right of the page owner. Consider how comment engines could mature. Except for major players, comment engines are often third-party services that are embedded into the page. Rather than embed the comments, which gives the comment provider data about the page and the viewer, use links to the external providers or embed external data into the page. Users can make the choice of which comment engine or user on that engine they would like to highlight or reject. Or consider a comment service that works with any page on any site. This remove the publisher's abilities to censor comments of his work. An ecosystem could be built where brief comments to serious discussions can be generated for the entire web. Consider a book. Tablets and cell phones have become a great platform to read books, listen to audio, or watch video. However, with the freedom of a wireless connection to obtain new material comes the tracking of the viewer. Using ShofarNexus as the operating system and sole program on a device, all wired and wireless connections can be disabled. There is no tracking. While there are many areas this could be used, consider the obvious. A single file, perhaps a gigabyte, on a low-cost device could contain all the sacred writings of a large number of faiths in multiple languages. Put them in the hands of people who can then privately consider what is true without being tracked. Consider censorship. Freedom is where Alice and Bob could convey thoughts and ideas freely to anyone they desire or anyone wanting to hear. When those thoughts are conveyed by a single service provider, the provider has the power to censor those who they see fit on their terms. If Bob is unacceptable, then Bob is censored. When there is a choice of service providers, including our own server, provider-imposed censorship disappears. There is a difference from being allowed to express freely at your expense and imposing on others to provide you a platform. Consider filtering. While provider-imposed censorship is a form of filtering, a user-selected filtering is a useful service. A user should be able to select individual sites to filter in his home or business, as well as use one or more providers of filter information to prevent the first access of a site. Consider hypersecurity. ShofarNexus defines hypersecurity as security you don't have to think about, since it is built in by design. Your data, as an individual or as an organization, belongs to you. You and you alone should have control on what you share and what you keep private. Most do not know how technology is being used to collect information about you. In the hypersecure environment, you are private by default, and must willingly and knowingly expose what data you desire. The objective is to protect those who don't know how they're being monitored from those who know how to monitor and control every detail of your life, and to do this as simply and understandably as possible. Consider distributed communications in computers. Centralized computers or networks is where all nodes communicate directly with a central authority. An Ethernet switch is centralized in a hardware sense, as all devices plug into a single switch, but from the perspective of the network, this is not true. Decentralized is where there is an ultimate authority, physically or just logically, and then layers of authority until the final node. The IANA's domain name system is decentralized in that there is a single root, multiple top-level domains, followed by multiple second-level domains, and continuing as necessary. Distributed is where there may be multiple authorities with a limited jurisdiction and potentially layered. Countries are distributed in that they have no higher authority, but within each country are typically layers of authority. It is worth noting that the logical and physical layout may be different. Consider Bitcoin as logically decentralized in that there is an ultimate reference, but physically distributed since that reference is not at one location. Consider Matreoshka. Matreoshka is a communications mechanism that uses multiple nodes with direct connections exchanging a continuous stream of fixed-length packets. When one user sends a message to another, such as an email, the originating computer decides a random path, arranges the path by establishing each connection through the previous, and then finally sends the message. For each layer of communications, the message is uniquely encrypted. This allows end-to-end communications with no intermediary or external party having the raw data or metadata. There is no evidence communications ever takes place. Consider private routing. Logically, a message simply travels from our computer to another using an IP address. The large number of physical routers in between makes the routing process transparent for us. There are advantages to the scheme in that traffic congestion or hardware failures are handled by the system and our traffic continues to flow. The blatant disadvantage is that you are now subject to the system, the tracking, and being limited to which destination you can reach. Consider when the user's computer, and optionally manually by the user, the routing is decided locally. The user does not use a unique IP of the destination, but a list of next nodes along a path. The first router uses the first node ID to select the next node in the path and strips its ID from the path. This process repeats until the message arrives at the destination. When using the Matreoshka protocol, the nodes or routers in the path can only see the identifiers of the previous and subsequent nodes. What the entire path is, the source and destination, remains unknown. The message is private and untraceable. Only the user's computer knows the path and knows it fully. This was difficult in the 1980s. This is very doable today. Consider an invisible network. In the single program environment, or when ShofarNexus has sole control of a network interface hardware, an invisible network becomes possible. There are many low-level messages, such as Address Resolution Protocol or the TCP handshake, that the operating system will dutifully respond to. This allows unknown machines or scanners to find that a given computer exists and then explore potential holes to allow access. ShofarNexus makes a computer invisible by not responding to the low-level messages, including the TCP handshake, so that its presence cannot be detected. There are some messages, such as Address Resolution Protocol, that must be responded to for local network operation, but will only respond to necessary devices such as a router. Authorized computers are free to communicate as normal. This is well beyond what firewalls provide and can be designed such that there's essentially no configuration options on the invisible computer and therefore no configuration error to open a hole. Consider rootless domains. The domain name system is decentralized but not distributed, as there remains a single root. Consider when the user can use the IANA root, alternative roots, and private roots. Takedown of a domain in a private root becomes difficult. Private domains can be useful for internal organization use or even within family or friends. When DNS services are performed at the client using the Matreoshka protocol, they become Untraceable. Consider a single program and operating system. In the embedded world, where a small computer is used for a specific function, such as the one in your keyboard or mouse, there is typically no general-purpose operating system involved. The computer does one thing and typically does it well. A cell phone that is not a smartphone is almost the same. There is no need to be able to run other programs, especially user-downloadable programs. Often, a non-general purpose device can be a significant help in reducing the possibility of a virus being loaded by the user or due to an operating system flaw. ShofarNexus is designed for that purpose. It can be used in its basic form for things like phones, web servers, or media servers. ShofarNexus can be customized and renamed to be something completely different, such as running gas pumps, which has been done. Perhaps you have a need. Consider public domain. There are many software projects that are open source but do include licensing terms. ShofarNexus is simply public domain. When you have the program, you have the source, as it is an integral part of the program. You are free to do as you desire. The only request is that you use a different name. It could be Shofar Other, to show a relationship to ShofarNexus, or simply Other. You are free to set your own licensing terms. You are free. Consider the demo website. If you are technically inclined or simply curious, consider browsing the demo site at demo.shofarnexus.com. All security is turned off, so you may examine all freely. Note that the site is frequently wiped clean when updated, so your data may disappear. Consider being mentored. While ShofarNexus is being put in the public domain, for a few there could be an advantage to working with the original developer. The developer has been doing this for over 40 years. Especially if you are young, as in a lot less than 40 years, this might be for you. This is not a paid position, but you will be assisted to build your own business. If you can be bought, you are not the one. If you are after fame and fortune, you are not the one. If this idea does not scare you, you are not the one. If you understand you are being offered hell on earth, and know why you want it anyway, perhaps we should talk.